This gives us a little bit more time than expected, but this is already nice for us. I had to do some changes in today's program, so I will perhaps start already with a session that was planned a little bit later, where I talk a little bit about IBExpert tools, programs, software, modules, and so on. This was planned for this afternoon, and you will see the whole program, which session will be when. For example, the session of Roman will be sometime this afternoon. It was planned for yesterday, but yesterday Roman was not here already, so, but now he is already here. There are some things I want to talk about to you. For example, we've created an idea regarding the visibility of Firebird perhaps in future versions. It's sometimes hard to attract people to really find a database system, a piece of software that is really interesting. Perhaps when you compare it to other software, you sometimes see that other software products are often used in environments where you do not even think it will be usable there. So, don't know for a good example at the moment, but for example, especially in the web area, there are a lot of examples like how to write a blog or something like this in a specific programming environment. And we thought that one of the really worth thing of the last years in Firebird is the example database. Any one of you has opened the employee database within the last years, and any one of you found data that has the date newer than 2000 in some data. So, for example, all the data, sales, and so on, are typically listed within the year 2000 or earlier. And when you open such an example database, it's sometimes a little bit ugly from my point of view if the data is already looking really old. And a lot of possible functionalities that can be created inside a Firebird database are not inside the database already. So I thought about the creation of a new example database, perhaps, with a totally different approach. And when I was thinking about all this, I was talking to a friend of us who's a book writer and so on, and he's really successful with his books. We thought about why not creating an example database which will give you a platform for an online poker game. It sounds a little bit strange to have an online poker game inside Firebird, but if you think about the architecture that is Firebird able to do, it's not so hard to program this, and it will be definitely a really nice way to attract people to understand what you can do with triggers, what you can do with procedures, and what you can do, for example, with events and all the stuff internally. And I was remembering a example database somebody at Borland created 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. It was the life simulation. I do not know if you know that. The guy, his name was Bill Carvin, and he created a database that does the same thing as a life simulation does. For example, you have two cells, and if all the cells around you are filled up, you die. If you have some free areas around you, you can live, and if you are alone, you will also die, and so on. There are some simulation rules, and he completely wrote this part inside a interbase database in that time. And it was really funny to see all about the rules that can be created inside a database to have a really active system, but with a really poor user interface. The poor user interface will be definitely the same thing I expect from such a poker database, perhaps, because in general, I would say, if somebody is interested in such a project to work on such a demo database together with us, you're welcome. My point of view regarding this poker database example would be that you can play with it also with ISQL. So you can simply, for example, get a username for a specific table. You can take your first deck of cards. You can see the flop. You can see the flop river. And what was the third? Don't know. Forgot already. I think I was too tired yesterday evening. And there are a lot of rules that are really well known in the world, and a lot of these rules can be easily implemented inside a Firebird database. And having a example where you simply have a small address database with some sales data will not attract so many people for projects to understand what you can do with inside such a database. So the idea that we have behind that is to start this kind of development. I had already done some work on it. Perhaps we have the time this evening on the evening event to talk about this and to perhaps have some reviews regarding the functionality of a poker rules. We decided to set up a poker table this evening here in the restaurant, and everybody who's interested can do some games with us. We will start right after 9 o'clock, I think, right after the meal, the dinner is over, and perhaps we will find some discussion regarding rules, how we can implement all this inside a Firebird database. And regarding this small poker tournament that we planned this evening, we also decided to have a first prize for the winner, which is an IBExpert lifetime license. And so perhaps it's interesting for some people to join us this evening. So you will see me somewhere sitting on a table, and simply come to us this evening and take your beer with you, and we will see you there. I think such a example database might be an interesting way to attract people more in the possibilities that you have inside Firebird. You will definitely, or we will definitely have a better point of view around the world if we have people talking about this database. I never heard about a example database regarding a online poker server, for example, based on MySQL also. But I can perhaps not have looked for it until now. The idea behind that is also that we are creating a kind of interface where, for example, Jiri can set up a .NET application, Roman can set up a Java application, and perhaps we can also set up a simple PHP application based on that. So we do not have only an application that simply shows you some data. It can be really usable. We can really use it for really online games, and it's no problem. We can directly use, for example, an IBExpert server to set up such a database, so that everybody can directly get his own instance of this database and does his own development together with all of us. But if somebody wants to check, for example, a specific way how to implement some rules, it would be no problem. But the combination of a really intelligent database, where all the processes are programmed inside the database, with a nice but perhaps not so intelligent GUI on top of it, might be really interesting for a lot of people. So you will see this evening, from my point of view, where we can be perhaps in a few weeks, and if the people will talk about this project, it will definitely be a good addition for people, for attract new people working with Firebird in the future. Okay. One of the sessions I wanted to have this afternoon is the session regarding IBExpert, and I hope the network now works. There will be some changes, but you will see this right after this session, where I should look at Friday, would be easier to find it. This session here now will be in a shorter way now here. So I think this session will be set with a Roman session from yesterday. So just have a look at this plan in right after the or right at the beginning of the next session, for the beginning of the next session, and you will see what will be when in what room. Yesterday I showed you already some parts of IBExpert, like that we have the possibility to start IBExpert, and within IBExpert you have a keyword-driven help system. This possibility is also available inside the personal edition. So when you are connected to any database, it is really easy. Simply, I have to start my RAM disk. I hope it can be started. Within the last years, I had some experience with working, for example, with Firebird on RAM disk. It sounds a little bit strange for a lot of people, but you might have some improvements of performance. And I will talk about this in the next session when I go a little bit around the performance area. You can do a lot of strange things with such architectures. And if you are using functionalities that are built inside Firebird, it's not as dangerous as it sounds. But if you have an unstable database server, a RAM disk is not a good idea. It seems that my RAM disk is empty again, so it will not have any data inside. So I simply go to cd suck program file Firebird 2.5 notepad FBCon. Okay, this is port, this is correct. cd bin install super classic. Forgot to name the instance. Uninstall, install FB25. Okay. Now it should be possible to open the database, and it works. And what I've showed you already yesterday is simple. For example, if you have any of the keywords somewhere in the SQL editor, simply go with the cursor on the keyword, press F1, and it directly redirects you to a website where we have a list of keywords, and we try to have help pages for all the keywords that we find anywhere in the source code of IBExpert or in the source code of Firebird. But also in the source code of Interbase if we would have access to it. But Interbase is definitely not a product with a lot of future from my point of view. Here you can redirect, you can search for whatever you need here. For example, a blob, what is a blob, limitations of a blob, more infos regarding how to define a blob inside IBExpert. And you have the possibilities to see almost everything that you need somewhere inside your daily programming business. A lot of people, for example, also often have the problem to create some SQL parts. So if we have, for example, have a little bit more complex database, I will simply try this one. I showed you already yesterday. And this a little bit more complex database will also have some possibilities to have really large tables. For example, BSA. And BSA is a table with around 169 columns. It's not the most complex table here. But let's think about writing a SQL statement with all the columns and having all the variables for all columns automatically. Simply do a drag and drop from the database tree to the SQL editor. And you can simply say here, okay, I have a wizard to get some possible ways to write my SQL statements. And this kind of SQL statement, when you write it by hand, you will definitely have a lot of time in your life, and you will definitely have a larger amount of hours you need for solving a project. We can also have, for example, here a select into, a list of variables, and when we say, okay, each variable has a specific prefix, we can, for example, say, okay, every variable is set by a prefix of v underscore, and the alias name for the BSA is, for example, the A. So this is sometimes a little bit easier to write such a list. And if we do a select statement, I remove this, or we do an insert into construction, we do an update, are more often a problem, declare variable. So what kind of type is set for the individual column, and this will be definitely much easier compared to the other information. Or if you want to have, for example, an extract for creating a new table or something like that, it is really easy to do it in that way. If you want to have a simple copy of a table, you can use the following syntax in IBExpert. TMP underscore BSA, select star from BSA, for example. What does this mean? You know this already. You can insert data into another table from a select statement. But in most cases, you have to create this table first to use it. Not in IBExpert. You can simply start it, and IBExpert will create it immediately for you. So now we have a data copy here inside the same database. And when I look for the table, it has the same structure as the original table, but no foreign keys, no primary keys, so the restrictions are not copied. Especially when you simply want to have a copy of data somewhere in the database because you want to copy the data back sometimes later. It is a really easy way to do it in such a way. This can also be done not only in the same database, but also to a different database. So, for example, when I go from here, I take the database registration info, and I want to copy the same data into this database. We have an internal syntax where we can simply use brackets to have the database registration name, the registration name that we use inside IBExpert to copy data into this database, into this table from this local select. And when we start this, it will try to connect to this database. it shows that this database does not have the same table, the table name mentioned here. And now it directly transfers all the data to a second database. So sometimes, if you simply want to copy data from one database to another, it is the much easier way to do it in this way. And you've seen already, creating a table with the same structure would be not so hard using IBExpert. But in this case, when you're using it in this way, you do not even have to think about creating the table on the target database. You can simply add this command this part in front of the table name of your destination. Yes, yes. We have the possibility to use almost everything in the almost same syntax from an IBE block. IBE block is a scripting language that we have implemented inside all IBExpert tools. And you can, for example, use IBE block to create different connections from one script. And you can, for example, get a insert into, select from. You can use also for from an IBE block. So command line means simply in that case, write it to a text file, batch file or whatever, SQL file locally, and simply start it with a tool which is called IBEscript. IBEscript is a command line tool. Every IBExpert installation have this IBEscript exe included. And you have, for example, the possibilities to automate operations. I will show you a simple way how to use it automatically. For example, we are taking this database, for example, and I want to do an extract metadata from this database, for example. I can open IBExpert, extract metadata tool. I extract all. I use separate file options. I use DTMP DB6 as a target directory. I use all data tables. I can also do a where clause. I can add a where clause for this table, for this table, for this table to have, for example, only some tables copied. And I can set several options here. For example, also that we can extract blob data. I showed already yesterday in a small way, but this is possible to extract the data, to do a dump of the database automatically without doing all this manually. So what I can do here is simply this execute block, this file here, is simply created automatically, and I can store this in a command line file, tmp ex, I call it ex.sql. And what I can do now is really simple. I can load it into the IBExpert EDE and run it. So now we should have some data inside the temp directory, DB6. Here you see the tables. You only see the tables that have really data. All other tables that have no data are not prepared in the list of data tables. But what I can also do is really simple. I can go to the command line version and I go to the tmp IBEscript ex.sql. It does the same thing from command line. So if you're using this, for example, as an alternative backup version, because you have all data to recreate a database inside this script files, it is a way, for example, to have access to the database a little bit more flexible. For example, if you have a backup file and you simply want to get the data from an old backup file from only one table, there's no way to do so using GBack or any other built-in tool from Firebird. But when you're doing it in this way, you simply have to look at the directory and simply can say, okay, I only want to have the order details table data. And in the order details table data, I think the database is empty, so I take a different database. I will take a database. I will take the AWeb database. It's much more complex, but it will still work. I say, okay, extract metadata, DTMP, DB7, extract all, separate files, and so on. Okay, I run it once. And it runs almost similar to the backup, to GBack or something like that. It extracts all the objects, but they are not only stored in binary format somewhere in a binary GBack file, they are stored in text files. And you can simply remove, for example, parts of the database definition before you recreate the database. We also use this for converting interbase databases really often, because Interbase has the possibility to create database object names with more than 31 characters. And if you have such a database definition, it's sometimes really ugly if you have to remove a column name, for example, from a table which is part of a primary key, which is used in a lot of tables and in a lot of triggers as a foreign key, or in variables and so on. And when you want to remove all the data, all the definitions that are based on that, it is sometimes not so easy. So when we have a look at this directory, it is still in the process of creating the definition of the first part of the database. And as you see, we know already that we have a lot of database objects that should be extracted. And in a few seconds, we will have a dump of this complex database. I do not know why, but we found at several customers already that we had, for example, I think 2 weeks ago, a customer showed us a database that was created with Firebird 2.5, and he used in several areas the type of definition. And he deleted some objects, and I do not remember exactly what the reason was, but their database was only able to do a backup, but a restore always runs in an error. And this is a really bad situation. For example, if you do not do the restore automatically, you will find this error when you need the restore. And this is often a timeline when you do not want to see the restore. You can see here the extract is really fast. So it is not as fast as the GBack runs. One of the other tools that I let it run in the background, one of the other tools that IBExpert gives you access to is the backup restore scheduler. Within IBExpert, you have the possibility, I have to start it with administrator rights, otherwise I will not have access to my services. This tool makes it possible to set up automatic backups, and you can also use it not only for doing a backup, but also for doing an automated restore. And using this tool for a backup makes it possible, for example, to have the backup compressed on your disk. It makes a zip file or uses other zipper for creating the resulting part. You can define a schedule. For example, one job should run every day at 1 o'clock in the evening or in the night. And a second job should perhaps run every day at 12 o'clock noon
for having 2 backups per day. But the daily backup, for example, should be automatically restored on a second server. When I do a restore, I can say I enable the restore. I do some info lines. The info queries are set only for having some informations about the database in the log file already. For example, here you can simply say, here's a select statement, get the data from the last invoice in my database to see which numbers are the highest invoice that I have in this database. And I am also able to have the settings here that I always use a specific page size for restore. I change the buffer setting. I use a separate restore folder. So it's no good idea to have an automatic backup and an automatic restore on the production database, because when an error happens and the backup is able to run, but the restore stops working for whatever reason, you will have only a part of the database running. Here you can set up that it should use the restore on an alternate server, which is really easy when you have, for example, a custom environment, end user environment, where you simply want to have a backup every hour and a restore every hour on a second computer, to simply have the possibility if the main server fails working, you can directly work on the backup server without any tricky clustering or whatever technology you need in that time. So this can be automated in that time. And you can create as many jobs as you need. You can do the scheduling, for example, every day, every night, every minute, every 10 seconds or whatever. You can start the backup automatically. It is created as a service. It runs as a service. So this is only the definition interface that can be used for defining the jobs. And when such a job is, here you do the predefinition and you have to right-click, add task for a real job that should run. So do not only fill out this part, and this part is only the default setting for such a task that can be set specifically for a specific database job. And you have also an email notification, which can be set in several levels. For example, when there's a backup error, you can get an email. When the backup is succeeded, you can get an email. Because when you do not get an email, it might be already a problem for you. And the same thing can be done with restore. The email settings can use a SMTP server wherever it can be reached from your network. We have also some customers that are running the software, and the emails go to our office, because in some cases when the customer gets an error, he's interested in knowing that he has an error, but he still wants us to fix this error as soon as possible and not waiting for having a big problem with the database. Okay, well, I will have a look. The metadata extract is completed. And what we see here is now a very complex list of SQL statements. And you see, for example, in this directory, we have 1,356 individual files. And, for example, this one is created. And this one does the creation of the database. And here are the user-defined functions created by Christoph Leuring, sitting somewhere here, I think. Domains. The AWeb project is working extensively with domains. Generator and values for the generators are extracted. A lot of generators. Procedures are created, but all the procedures are created with an empty body, because you do not have the cross-references already now. You simply have to start with an empty source code to not have reference problems, because you have to use a specific sequence to create all the procedures. The procedures are created. Takes some time to have all procedures created. You see a lot of procedures. The views are created here. We have much more than 1,000 views in this database. And after that, for people who already saw this yesterday, after that, IBExpert SQL is running. It runs entering the data. Entering the data, for example, somewhere we have here the table BSA SQL, for example. When I have a look here, BSA SQL simply shows us insert into BSA whatever. And you see here, for example, the functionality available in IBExpert to have a SQL macro, this part, values, and all this part up to the top, is simply used in the next name, in the next line here as a reinsert keyword. It simply makes the scripts smaller, but you can also avoid to use a reinsert keyword if you want to use the script with a different processing engine. But here you see the data from the BSA table, and when the BSA table is inserted, it has, for example, relations. You can imagine, for example, the invoice tables has relations to the customer table, but in the way that we create the scripts in the IBE $start, there is no relation between any table. The relations between the tables and between all the other objects are simply created here in the IBE $finish thing. We're doing here, for example, some constraints. We are adding here unique constraints. And these are created after the data is already inserted in the database. So it is a very easy way to have, for example, possibilities to simply do changes in the start and in the finish SQL statement, even that they have so many dependencies over the whole database. So this is a way how you can do that, and the same thing can be done here in the background from a command line version. I will simply delete. And when I do the IBE script, ex.sql, it does the same thing from a command line. So this is one of the ways how you can use, for example, IBExpert with your application in a kind of an automatic way. The similar functionality can also be used from a DLL. You can also use this as a IBEscript DLL, which has the same functionality. And here's a demo application where you can simply, this is created with Delphi, where you can simply see the user interface and you can directly integrate the DLL version into your project, into your application. And to be allowed to do so and to distribute the whole IBExpert. No, this is not the case. I wanted to have IBE. We have some products that you can order. The easiest way is using the var license of IBExpert. The var license allows you to distribute all modules that you have inside the IBExpert package to all your customers together with your software. The second way, if you want to have, for example, only access to the IBEscript exe, there is a specific distribution license for this module only. So simply have a look at our online shop and you find directly most of the products that you need there. You can also talk to Andrea Schmidt. She's responsible for sales in our office, and she will tell you about every possible combination of products that you need in your application. Technically, the DLL version or the exe version or the whole IDE from IBExpert do know the same capabilities. They have the same possibilities in all their scripting language. So what you can do in any of these platforms, you can do in all ways. For example, combining the metadata of some tables. We have inside the IBE block, we have a lot of functions available. And one of the functions, for example, is the IBEC extract metadata. This was used by the script that runs here in the background. And the IBEC extract metadata function is here shown, which options you can use, what kind of different examples you can use. For example, if you simply want to extract the metadata from a current connection, you can do it in this way. It's really easy to call. There are only a lot of possibilities within the options, but you do not need them all. If you need, for example, something, a lot of customers of us use IBExpert and the IBExpert scripting tools to compare databases. We have, for example, a functionality IBEC compare metadata, completely written wrong. Compare metadata. And this function can be used, for example, to distribute your application simply with a reference database. And when you have a new version of your database, you can simply distribute this database in the structure that you want to be, that you want to have the database, and you can use this function to compare the existing database of your customer with your reference database. And IBExpert creates a script how to create the same structure based on the database that the customer already has automatically. So it's really easy to manage updates automatically. There are sometimes a lot of more needed updates, operations to be done inside. For example, in the AWEB system, there are not only the metadata updates required, but in a lot of cases, you also need to update some data in specific tables. But this can be done in separate steps, since we also have the IBEC compare data. I think it was the name. When you do not know how the name was, simply write here IBEC and use the compare tables was the name. This can be used, for example, to create a script based on data in two tables, and it will create a script, use all from one table and update all the other table existing data already. There are a lot of possibilities that can be used here to find, for example, also differences between tables. There are a lot of possibilities. And you can, for example, say, when I compare the data with another data table, I do not want to have deletes on this table to be done. This is the compare tables functionality. We have a lot of scripting functionalities. As you see here, for example, a lot of people who are familiar with the Delphi environment, for example, will definitely see a lot of functions that they already know from Delphi, perhaps. But we have created already a lot of possibilities here. What we also do in this way is automatic, for example. We have also the possibility to run, to create PDF files automatically from this environment. In IBExpert, we have a so-called report manager. And the report manager simply is an implementation that is used to define a fast report-like preview, definition of the report. And this is stored inside a file or inside the database. We have functionalities used, for example, in web applications that we have created for customers. For example, this one, IBExpert.net Stundenzettel, which is a web application based on Firebird, where the whole programming was done inside Firebird. There's only an interface from the web server to the Firebird database. Well, it seems to be a problem with the network at the moment. I can perhaps show it later on in a different session when I have better access to the network. But I can still show what I was talking about. The report manager here can be used to create a new report inside the database. We will store it in some internal tables. And it's really easy. If you have ever used a fast report, for example, already, you can directly define a report here. And this report can be created automatically, also from the scripting engine, IBC create report. This functionality can be used to create a report based on parameters automatically. And the functionality, for example, to not only create the report, but also to export the report to a specific format can be also done automatically. We are using this in web applications where we create PDF files automatically on the server based on simple entries inside a table. When I get a new print job in a table print jobs, it fires an event and the script runs with a wait for event functionality. And when this event will happen, it directly starts to create the report, exports this report into a PDF file, and redirects the user from the web application to this PDF file. So it's really easy to have, for example, based on this technology, a web application with also creating PDF files automatically without having this to be forced to be created with PHP libraries or something like this. What we also have, a lot of people know that we have the licensing scheme based on the computer names. The only thing why we made this is really simple. In a typical network, you cannot use the same computer 10 times, the same computer name 10 times. So especially smaller companies often have the idea to buy one license and to use it 20 times because it's not disallowed, so it's allowed. We, from my perspective, think that we are very fair against our customers. So we say you can use IBExpert on one machine and you get a free license for a second machine, typically the laptop or whatever you are using for your daily work and also for the business work when you are driving around or so. But we also have a new product, which is the IBExpert Portable Edition. The IBExpert Portable Edition is simply a USB stick that is predefined from us. I think I have one in my bag, but you can imagine what a USB stick is. The USB stick simply has a IBExpert version running on it, a full version without any limitation. And everywhere where you want to put the USB stick inside, you can directly use IBExpert without any limitations. So we know from a lot of customers that they want to use IBExpert full version with all the functionalities regarding performance issues and definition of optimizing the performance of databases, also on their customer computer, but they do not want to pay for a license for the customer because they do not want to have their customer using IBExpert and manipulating the database on its own. So this is perhaps the best way to have a IBExpert portable license, which allows you to have the IBExpert full version anywhere where you put this USB stick in. For example, if you have a SQL statement running, select star from test and execute the script, you can have a look, for example, at the plan analyzer. The performance analysis shows you red line, non-indexed, blue is index reads, updates, deletes, inserts, and so on. And when you are working on a customer computer and you want to find out about possibilities, how to improve the performance of the customer's database, perhaps, we have a lot of helpful tools inside to find out what might be the reason for really slow operations. In my next session, I will also tell a little bit about possibilities, how to use the monitoring tables a little bit more in detail. And the monitoring tables internally have the possibility for you to find out which attachments are currently online, which transactions are currently on this database, and what statements are currently running on this database. And we have some technology inside Firebird that is really extremely useful. For example, the database trigger, which can be used to store the data from the monitor tables in a static table. So you can, for example, see who has yesterday used a select star statement from whatever table, and what was his IP address, what was the username when he started this. I think a few years ago you perhaps read about stolen credit card data and general trigger, which does only a insert, update, delete trigger. You will not see the select statement. But when you are using the monitoring tables with the database trigger, it's really powerful, and you can really use it for really strange things. And you can also use it for really stupid things. Perhaps if you have used the IBExpert download center within the last 4 weeks or so, it was extremely slow. And I have programmed a small database trigger inside that was not properly programmed under the aspect of performance issues. It was a on-commit database trigger, and the on-commit database trigger will be fired really often from a web application. And this operation took some data from a table where we have stored the IP addresses from people who were on the download center, and checked out this data with another data where I know, okay, this IP address area comes from this country. But in that combination, it was a SQL statement that did not use an index, and that was joined to a host table. And the host table was entered, a new host entry was entered with every new connection that was not already there in the past already. And when I checked out this SQL statement the first time, I had no point of view on the performance issue because it was already really fast. But with having only 100 hosts in this table, it was still fast enough. But last week we reached, I think, about 200,000 hosts in that table. And this was combined with, I think, 32,000 entries in this IP country relation. And both were combined without an index. And this was not a good idea. And this was done inside a on-commit statement. And this resulted in almost unreachable the application on our database server. So sometimes, like we say in Germany, the roof of the roof maker, das Dach vom Dachdecker, when you show people you are concentrated on, and people often pay a lot of money for me to improve their performance, But when I work on my own projects, I sometimes do not be in the same way careful as I am for customers. But I learned from that a lot already again. The portable edition I was talking about allows you to use IBExpert anywhere where you want to do so. The VAR license allows to distribute the IBExpert EDA and all the tools that you saw here, backup restore scheduler and everything else, together with your software without additional costs. You simply have to pay for the VAR license, a specific value per year. We have the site license. When you do not distribute your software to other companies, you only use your software in your own company. The site license is a preferred way for you. And if you want to have only, for example, a few customers that should have the DLL and the Excel, IBScript Excel or DLL, you can use a product which is called the Server Tools. This product starts at €49 per installation, and you have access to backup restore scheduler, IBScript Excel, IBScript DLL, but no IBExpert EDA. So it's simply for automating your work. The one of the other tools that I wanted to mention is also, for example, the ODBC viewer. This can be used, for example, to take data. This data is, for example, here from an ODBC connection to an Excel file. So you do not have to program anything for importing data or having access to Excel. You simply can say, okay, run my Excel data here into a local table. So I can show it in a few seconds. Therefore, you need a specific ODBC administration tool. It's really important when you're working with ODBC 32-bit on Windows 64-bit versions. There is an ODBC administrator, which is typically only for 64-bit ODBC. But there's also an ODBC administrator in the directory we mentioned yesterday already, this VOV64, that can be used for 32-bit operations. And this, for example, is directed here, test XLS. And it's really easy to have here test XLS. And as you can see, we already had a lot of examples here. F1, F2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And when I want to have this data accessible easily from an ODBC driver, I simply have to mark this area, name it, for example, tab 22, and store the file. And when I go back to IBExpert, open the ODBC viewer with the same connection, I have here the tab 22, and I see directly the data. So if you have data from any customer, he delivers the data to you by Excel file. It's really easy to import them, because now we can say export to script table. I want to have it into a table, a new table. I call it tab 22. These are the column definitions, and now they are exported. Exported from the point of view of the Firebird databases means now imported. Now I have them physically in my database, and I can use it for stored procedure to update data in my old database or whatever. We have also a import data assistant, which will be the last thing I show it to you here. And within this, it is a little bit easier, for example, also to get direct access to Excel files and direct access to anything else that you want to use here as an input format for importing data. Okay, it was only a short overview about IBExpert. We have still a lot of functionalities inside that I cannot demonstrate in 1 hour. I could, without a problem, talk about IBExpert features for 10 hours or 2 days or so, without showing you things that were not already shown before. It is a very, very capable environment for your database work. typical customer project, the last customer projects were almost 100% based on IBExpert technology. We have more and more customers who want to have web applications, and I do not know if the web application will be online again. It looks fine, but it seems our server has some timeout. It comes. And this web application is used, for example, from a company. The company is in the business of time-sharing engineers. The engineers work for a lot of companies, for example, Airbus, Lufthansa, Rolls-Royce, and so on. And this was created for this company because all the people who work at a foreign area should be able to send their working data from the last month automatically using an online device, for example, an iPad or their mobile phone, their iPhone or whatever. And this was created from us purely with IBExpert. And all the functionality here inside is programmed inside Firebird stored procedures. We only have some parts used outside, for example, which are based on JavaScript environment. But the PHP part, for example, is simply a file of about 30 lines. The scripting engine PHP is used to get the data from the formula, send it to a stored procedure inside Firebird, and the stored procedure itself gives the result back to the web server. It runs on Apache, and this customer is using the software currently for 1,500 employees, which are entering their data only on the first 2 business days per month, because all the people have only until the 3rd business day per month to enter their data. After that, they get not fired, but they get some internal talks. And when they started with this, it was 5 months ago or so. It was really interesting to see that the Firebird server internally has no problem to handle all this amount of data. There are a lot of accesses. We have a lot of transactions inside the database. But it runs really nice. And when I simply press on print, I get a PDF created in the background on our server. And the PDF is now sent to me for download. And we can have a look here for the PDF file. And this is a PDF file which was created based on fast report technologies. So the end user, the company, does some changes in the template of the printing thing, but they do not have to do the changes somewhere in the stored procedure. They use IBExpert, open the report manager, and put their fonts and their data wherever they want to have it. So it's really easy also to define such a report inside such a project. We try to have this technology perhaps available for all IBExpert customers until the end of this year. If you have, for example, a question regarding a customer project where you need some web application support based on that, we are definitely extremely fast in creating web application based on this technology without having only a long list of ideas and waiting for a long list of telephone calls with other people. We simply start to implement such an application based on database technology, and it runs on all platforms. We test it on iPhone, on Safari, on iPad, on Opera, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. And it still runs on all platforms. Okay, questions before we can take some coffee? Any time for a question is also any time you see me anywhere. So if you want to use your voucher, which is for most people on the back side of this one here, this is a voucher for the business tickets worth €100. You can use, for example, also this voucher for buying a portable license or extending your existing license. Feel free to do with this voucher whatever you want. you can ask Andreas Schmidt for potential offers that fit your needs. Okay, thank you, and see you again in about half an hour. I think we have the next step. We have 2 sessions. One is here. I think it's me, and the other one on the next side is Roman. Okay.